People keep talking about whether or not AI-generated artwork is going to take the place of graphic designers, and I don't know if that's true in the industry or in the church world, but I did try an experiment. Maybe we'll find out. Okay, so I designed sermon series graphics and other graphics for churches around the US and even around the world now, just about every single week. And I am not immune to the conversation that's going on right now about AI, and especially AI-generated artwork. It seems like I can't get on YouTube or social media without somebody talking about, especially like in the graphic design world, how AI is very likely to take all of our jobs. Now, it feels like there's two camps. There's the camp where everybody's like, graphic designers are dead, dude. Or there's the camp that says, I just think that the people who do not use AI will always be superior. I don't know why that guy decided to be French, I'm sorry. I think I'm generally a proponent of AI being a useful tool for graphic designers. And I'm gonna share some of my thoughts at the end of this video, but I wanna share with you an experiment that I did just to add to the conversation. I don't think that this is definitive in any kind of way. I had a client who was looking for some sermon series graphics for their youth group, and I decided to have a conversation with him about whether or not he had an opinion about AI or not AI, and I had to deliver two concepts for the series, and so I decided to do one concept, no AI, and one concept that was AI generated. You'll see that I actually did some more work on it, so it was not completely AI, but it used AI and one didn't use AI at all. And I wanted to see, did that have any kind of influence on which one he picked? Now, this is not a super scientific experiment, but I just wanted to see what it would be like. So come along on the journey with me. This client is a repeat client named Jake Marburger from North Bend Students in West Virginia. Shout out Pastor Jake. So first, I took the brief from Pastor Jake and got organized. I templatized everything for Fiverr orders because it saves valuable time. So I duplicated my template folder to get started. Then I brought the references he gave me in my order requirements into Notion and hunted down some references of my own from Pinterest. I have an enormous board of everything I've ever liked in graphic design here to reference. I grab any ideas that particularly inspire me in light of the brief, so I know what kind of graphic I want to do before I do it. So first up is the AI-driven concept. So I jumped into MidJourney AI. I worked out a prompt that fit the ideas I had in my head. You can ignore the sugar skulls, by the way. That's for TractMy, who are not sponsoring this video, but you should definitely still go to their website, www.tractmy.com, and check out their selection of Gen Z gospel tracks. I promise it's not sponsored. He's just another Jake in my life worth repping. So I generated a bunch of different versions of this church idea in MidJourney to see what was possible. I used both personalized profiles I've built and non-personalized generations to see what came up best. Then I upscaled a couple of versions I really liked. The winner for me was this church collage on a green background with grid lines. I brought it into Photoshop and laid out the series title on top of it. Then I masked out the text so it sat behind the church building, added some textural text, as I call it, and neatened everything up in the design. Okay, so the AI design is done, and I really like it. It actually has a lot of the same qualities that the reference images that the client actually sent to me kind of have. And so one of the things I'm looking at his references that is not the case with the image I just did, because I want to try to give him something contrasting to be able to choose between, is just very centered, big, bold text. And so I kind of like having more fun with the text than with the background. And so I'm going to focus on my non-AI design by doing that, by focusing on some kind of textured background that's a little more simple than what I've already done. Really focusing time on doing something different with the text and kind of text elements as a part of it, and then using textures to just make it pop. For the non-AI design, I wanted to go very different, but still in the wheelhouse of the brief. I'm not trying to do anything that screams, quote, not AI. I'm just not going to use AI. Duh. I started by focusing effort on the title of the series so I could build everything else around it for this version. I started with a font from Adobe Fonts and then messed it up until it looked cool, you know, for the students. Then I just layered textures and shapes to make a collage effect that's really popular for youth group designs right now. Some people smarter than me call this brutalism in design because you just brute force things together until they look cool. At the last minute, I added this big shape and it became the standout. I like the blurry edges and mismatched textures.
All right, so I had to break because we had our small group over at our house tonight. My wife and I are small group leaders, and now I'm gonna dive back in. So a couple of things that I'm thinking about where this graphic is now. I did just a little bit off camera where I added a couple of shape layers. I think it's starting to look really cool. I like the mixture of blurred boxes and textures. I think the colors are cool, but it's still missing a little bit. I think it'd be really cool to get some kind of imagery into the background here a little bit. And I just think it's just lacking a couple more pieces that would give it a little bit of texture, but we'll see. I really don't want to spend a little bit more than like 20 minutes on this at this point. And then I want to put everything into mockups and send it to the client to get some feedback, see which direction they want to go in.
At this point, I needed to add some realness to bring it home, so I sourced images from Unsplash to blend into the background. And finally, some final textures so nothing feels too digital or boring, and some textural text, and one last image for good measure. Okay, I think that the design is, I'm just kind of polishing a turd at this point to keep working on it. I need to know kind of what the client's thinking about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export both of these designs and bring them into a series of mock-ups so that my friend at the church can take a look and see it in context. Like, okay, this is what it would look like on social media. This is what it would look like on our screens potentially, so that he can make an informed decision about what direction he wants to go in. I have mockups licensed to my company through Envato Elements that I use to show clients what my work will look like in context. This is hugely important and worth the extra work every single time. When a client sees a 2D digital graphic in a real space, it clicks for their brain in a different way than if I just drop the graphic itself into the chat box. If you don't do this with your designs, I can't recommend it enough. There are free sites like Mockup World where you might be able to source what you need to show your stakeholders what your work looks like in context. It works, I promise.
Now everything's sent off to the client, and I just have to wait until I hear back from them. Okay, so it's day 2. I've been working on other projects with clients and a couple other meetings, but I just got a notification that Jake has some feedback, so let's go and see what he has to say. All right, so it's absolutely too small of a sample size to make any kind of broad sweeping gestures about the difference between AI generated and not AI, but he chose the non-AI version. Wants to go with a slightly different color scheme just to have some more contrast with the previous series.
So after I changed the color of the background to blue, I set to work creating the derivatives for this project. Slide backgrounds, a social media kit. Jake also wanted me to send an extra title graphic for each week of his sermon series that had the title of each week. Some clients do this themselves, but Jake wanted the branded look to go through the whole series. Once I was done, I packaged it all up in a .zip folder and sent it to Jake through Fiverr.
All right, everything's sent off to Jake, and I'm really curious to hear what he has to say. So when I'm looking at both of these designs, they do, to my eye, look like a similar amount of work. If I didn't know that AI was involved, I can see it. I can see the details. So like I know that this is the kind of detail you're going to get from AI. It does not handle type very well yet, especially small type. It's looking for patterns to recreate things, and so it just doesn't ever render text the right way. Like, I'm sure that what it was trying to give was like grid lines and like latitude, longitude numbers almost with the way that this design is built out. But it just, when you get really close, it doesn't actually work the way that you think it's working. But I would not be surprised if somebody had told me that this was a real aerial photo of a church somewhere that was taken, and a designer comped this out, created this overlapping work, did a fantastic job of rotoing out these trees, I mean, this design took me so much less time, but it's not the one that he picked. I'm curious. I'm at the time that I'm recording this, I'm waiting to hear back whether or not he had any idea which one was which from my understanding, Jake is just a youth pastor. He's not a graphic designer or has any kind of history with this. So I'm just really curious to hear what he says. This design is actually not my favorite of the two. I would have gone with this one if I was just looking at the quality of the work, but this clearly fit what he was looking for in a different way. And I'm curious to hear back if that had anything to do with the fact that it was not AI generated at all. I didn't even use any like generative fill or anything, unless one of these images, I don't think any of these images were AI. None of these textures were AI built. Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear kind of where things went.
So in the end, Pastor Jake chose the non-AI route. The unfortunate nature about Fiverr is that it's easy to lose things in conversations, so he didn't actually tell me whether or not it affected his decision, whether or not he thought it was AI or not. If I have any kind of updates, I'll let you know on social media. You can follow me at Midwood Road or at my personal account, Rhett J. Thomas, on Instagram. I do think it's interesting that he picked the non-AI. I actually thought that the AI-generated image was better in this case. Now, of course, I am always learning my clients. I'm learning what they like visually and what they need for their ministries as they are communicating their own unique expression of the big C church mission in their little C local churches, wherever they're at. But I thought that the AI image actually had so much more character to it than what I did. And of course, I added the text on top and did some texturing work, but I liked the AI image better. But the image that he went with was the non-AI one. Now, I think that the reality is this is not a scientific test. This is not definitive. But in this case, non-AI beat out AI, when I thought that AI should beat out non-AI. I think there's a couple of things on my brain when it comes to the whole AI conversation that I'm happy to talk about now. First, human touch is always going to be valuable. You know, no matter how convenient technology makes our lives, our workplaces, even if it opens up new horizons, I think that there's always going to be a reality where when humans make things, it's a little more valuable than when computers make things or when machines make things. I think of the clothing industry. I think of now graphic design. I think of music. I think that technology will always make things faster and make some things more achievable in ways that they weren't before. But I think that there's always going to be a special value applied to human touch because I think that we value human connection more than we value connection with machines. And so while machines are able to recreate a lot of those things, there's just something about human touch, whether it's actually something psychological in us or not. I think that there's always going to be a place for that. And so I think those designers who completely reject AI are always going to have a marketplace to be able to provide for themselves, which I think is a good thing. I think that the most healthy thing moving forward is for graphic designers in the church or not in the church to begin to assimilate AI tools. I do think that the people who are going to lose their jobs ultimately are going to be the people who don't have the skills to compete and then do not make up for that with technological tools. So I use AI as to generate concepts and to generate parts of graphics that I need, but it's not something that I just put a prompt in and then send it to a client. It's something that I've assimilated into my workflow. And I think that actually makes me a better designer overall because it gives me more tools to be able to give clients what they need. I think that's an important distinction. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think is going to be the history of creativity with AI? Do you think that AI is going to have an overall negative impact on creativity? Is it going to have an overall positive impact? Somewhere in the middle. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. You can connect by leaving a comment below, and I'd love to see you subscribe to this channel because we're going to be talking about this, I'm sure, for years to come in the industry when it comes to worship leading and production teams and for content creators. I actually have a lot of interest in seeing how AI is going to start affecting other realms of creativity in the church. Right now, we're seeing it start to be a big conversation when it comes to like art and creating content for the church. But there's actually, I'm sure there's going to be tools that are going to start to affect production teams and live production. There's going to be tools that might have a really interesting effect on worship leading that we're just not seeing them being applied there yet. And I'm very curious about where that's going to go. So if you have any ideas for something for us to talk about when it comes to the AI conversation, let me know in the comments below. But for now, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.